Adventure riding can be exhilarating, hopefully not stressful. Well, maybe a little bit of stress just for that adrenaline factor, but not from mistakes. I'm gonna reveal the 5 most common mistakes I see adventure riders making so that you don't make those same mistakes or you can overcome them if you have made them. So let's get to it. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. I continually see people making the same mistakes over and over again in their adventure riding, and I have even made some of these mistakes myself. And I wanted to cover the 5 most common mistakes I see or I have done myself to help you out. So in case you've made these mistakes, how to overcome them, and more importantly, if you're new to adventure riding or even if you've been doing it a while, to avoid these mistakes. The 5 most common mistakes that I see riders making is neglected bike maintenance, unprepared for the weather or the conditions, not watching the weather, not having proper riding skills, and not knowing when to turn around. And there's one other bonus, if you stick to the end, I'll talk about. It'll be a little bit controversial, but I think it's incredibly important. So let's get into those mistakes to see if you are making those and to make sure you don't on your next adventure. All right, real quick, after a little bit of deliberation and thinking about it, my bonus mistake I continuously see riders make, I'm actually gonna make that the #1 biggest mistake I see riders make. So I'm gonna put that in right now, and then we'll roll through the other 5 because I think it is so incredibly important and makes such a difference in your riding experience. Let me show you what it is. All right, this is the bonus mistake that I continuously see over and over and over again. And I almost think I should have made this one of the top 5. But this is going to be controversial and it may upset some of you out there. And that is, you are using the wrong tires for the conditions you're riding in for your bike, or you have picked the wrong trail to ride for the bike that you were on. i.e. you're riding the wrong bike for your skill level and what you're trying to do. Now, I want to start with the tire side of things. I continuously see riders on their big ADV bikes, the Harleys, the BMWs, even some of the big KTMs, and they have basically a road bias tire, a 70-30, an 80-20, however you want to match that up. And they're out trying to ride off-road. And I want to throw in there that the Dunlop Trail Max Mission, it is not an off-road tire. That is a road tire disguised as something good for some light forest roads, but it does not give the maximum amount of traction. It may be labeled as a 50-50, that is marketing. If you're going to be taking your 450, 500, 600 pound adventure bike off-road, put knobbies on it. It is more important to have traction than it is longevity on a set of tires if you're riding forest roads, Jeep roads, trails, BDRs, Continental Divide Trail, any of that. Sacrifice longevity for traction. It will help you in the long run. And I know there is this thought, and I see it all the time, this question, how long will a tire last? Who cares? The question you should be asking is, how much traction is that tire going to give me? That's the important question. If you're only getting 3 to 4 to 5,000 miles out of a rear tire, but that you're getting a tremendous amount of traction out of it because you're riding dirt roads, forest roads, Jeep trails, that's what you're looking for. You don't want a tire to last 10,000 miles because that's more road biased, or it's going to be an incredibly hard compound that's not going to give you the traction you need off-road. So I really think that this actually might be the biggest mistake that I see made and the one that's the easiest to fix. But I think this is the one riders are the most stubborn about. Ride a knobby if you're going to be doing anything that includes dirt. My opinion, based on the experiences that I have and what I see riders really getting stuck on. If your bike runs a chain, the most common area that I see gets neglected is chain maintenance. I've seen chains extremely loose. I know chains have broken because they're not getting changed or replaced when they should be, sprockets are getting worn out, things like that. Other bike maintenance that I see not being done is brakes. I've seen brakes not being bled or being improperly bled and locking up, and the pads being completely worn out because they haven't been checked. And then also taking oil beyond its maintenance schedule and destroying your engine over time because you're not taking care of that maintenance. Now, hopefully, if you're an adventure rider, you are more meticulous about your maintenance on your bike, because it is so incredibly important if you want to be able to complete a backcountry discovery route or any off-road riding, because it is really hard to get tow trucks in these back places and you're going to spend thousands of dollars. So you don't want to have anything like that happen. As much as I say that, I do see bikes that are just not taken care of. And the other real quick one that I see is tires are beyond their service date. If you're going to be way out here, you know, hundreds of miles from tow stations or a place that you can get out of, make sure you have good quality tires. So that's the number one thing I see is bike maintenance has just not been performed. Another thing that I see is riders are just unprepared for the conditions they're going to be riding in, or the weather they're going to be riding in, or the places they're going to be camping or sleeping. Now, one of the things that I see all the time that I think is a huge mistake is not carrying enough water. If you're going to be out adventure riding, especially in the desert, even in the mountains, you don't know where water is going to be available. I'm out here, if I needed water, I'd have to be filtering lake water. Not really what I want to be doing. And then I'm going to need water throughout the day. So that is something I continuously see missed. I see riders underprepared in the gear that they're wearing. They may not have rain gear, they may not have enough layers, they may underestimate how cold it's going to get in the mountains. One of the things that you really need to think about if you're going to be riding out west and you're going to be going through a lot of elevation changes, you know, at 10,000 feet, it might be 85 degrees during the day, but at night, it might even get close to freezing. If you're not prepared in your sleeping configuration, your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag, whatever it is you're using, you're going to be incredibly cold. You may not sleep, which is going to affect your ability to ride the next day. And then if you don't have enough layers to wear in the morning when you start riding and it's incredibly cold, it's going to make it uncomfortable as well. Or even worse, if it's really, really hot and you can't drop enough layers safely because you need to have your abrasion resistance and your crash resist, you know, your crash, your armor, things like that, and you're in a big heavy textile jacket that doesn't breathe, well, that's also a problem. You're sweating a lot, you're gonna overheat, and the chances of getting heat stroke are increased. So have a thorough system. I prefer a layered system to where I can go riding in the 40s all the way up to 90, 100 degrees if I need to, and have the same system with me all the time. Same with my sleep system. I can sleep anywhere from 40 degrees all the way up to 90 degrees if I have to. I carry that stuff with me all the time. So be prepared for the conditions. Don't underestimate how extreme it can be, especially in the mountains. Another big area to really watch out for that can really ruin a trip is don't overestimate your riding skills. I see this over and over again. I have ran into people on the trail and they've been asking me questions about what the trail is going to be like ahead. If I've ridden it, I try to give them my best estimate of what that is and what level of rider that's going to be. And I've had them tell me, yeah, no problem, we can handle this. And inevitably they get in over their heads. So ride, I don't know, 60% of what you think your capability is. So if you do get into those challenging situations, you can get through it, but you have nothing to prove. You don't have to go do those expert sections of a backcountry discovery route if you don't have the skills to do it. Now, is it worthwhile challenging yourself? Yeah, of course. In order to get your skills up, you need to challenge yourself here and there, but there is a limit to how much you want to challenge yourself. You go up a 5% or 10%. You don't go from riding at, you know, an intermediate level and immediately jump up to an expert level and try to think that you're going to handle that. That's how people get hurt, and that's how they break their bikes. And I have seen broken bikes over and over again from people overestimating their skills, getting in over their head, and, you know, dropping their bikes in areas that are very, very tricky. They're hitting rocks or breaking cases, just bad things are happening. And I have been guilty of that myself. When I wasn't as skilled of a rider as I am now, I got into some very sandy sections on a very heavy bike and I went down. And there was just nothing I could do about it because I didn't have the skills to get through it. I damaged my bike. Now I think riding those areas, because I have built those skills up over time, would not be a big deal. So don't overestimate your skills, ride within your limits, and more importantly, ride for tomorrow. You have nothing to prove. Nobody cares whether you can ride one of these sections or not. Don't let them try to talk you into riding something that's over your head. Another big mistake I see riders make, and I am guilty of this all of the time, is not paying close attention to the weather. And that has got me caught in hailstorms, extreme thunderstorms, and even riding out on the East Coast. I was very stubborn about my riding, and I was riding through storms that were generating tornadoes, and I didn't know that. And on the trails, there were trees down, and I was, you know, just riding around, pulling them off, doing what I needed to do, not realizing that I had maybe chosen a bad weekend to go ride. So I think it's really important, since we are exposed to all of the elements, know the weather conditions. Now, I'm not going to discourage you from going out and riding in the rain. Rain happens, it's just water, it's not a big deal. But look and see how big those storms are. If you find yourself riding and the rain's coming in, look to see if it's going to generate thunderstorms, especially out here in the West in the monsoon season when that comes in, which is typically beginning in June 15th through, I think, the end of August, maybe even into September. Those storms can generate a lot of rain, and that's where we get the flash flooding. For any of you that maybe have listened to some of the Adventure Rider Radio segments or podcasts, you may have heard of a few people getting themselves into trouble because they didn't listen or watch the weather forecast and didn't know that there was the potential for rain and flash flooding and got themselves into trouble. So be aware of that. Again, when it comes to weather, nobody cares what type of weather conditions you can ride in. The biggest thing you can do for yourself is just be safe. And if you're riding a BDR out here in the West where that dirt can turn to clay, if you're on it, you're gonna have an absolutely miserable experience. Just ask anybody who's gotten trapped on those roads when the conditions have gotten that bad. Their tires pack up with mud, the tires won't even roll, you are just fighting it. It is not worth it. So keep track of that. And if you are riding during the monsoon season, especially in Colorado or in the mountains, expect afternoon thunderstorms. It may not even be forecasted, but that is just a fact, that those storms they just pop up everywhere. So ride in the morning, be where you want to be at your campsite by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So when those storms come in around 3:30, 4 o'clock, you're already where you want to be and you're not having to ride in those conditions. So it's really important to watch the weather, especially out here in the West. But even from the East Coast riding that I was doing, I should have paid more attention to it because of extreme thunderstorms that generated tornadoes. Not smart. Be smart about your riding so you get to ride tomorrow and you're not a headline story. The next mistake I see over and over and over again, especially from men, we have egos. When we're riding with other guys, we don't want to see other people do better than us. There's a competitive nature that comes out, which is unfortunate because we make bad decisions, and that decision is not recognizing when it's better off to turn around. And for whatever reason, especially if you put two guys or more together, the chances of them coming to the conclusion that they need to turn around goes way down. We just have this irrational competitiveness that I can do everything you can, but do it better. And that gets us into trouble. You have to get to a point where it's better to turn around and ride something else or find another route than it is to get in over your head, like I'd mentioned before, not having the skills. But that idea that the trail will get easier or will get better the further you go is a fallacy. Do not fall into that trap. If you're going through a section and it is incredibly difficult, consider whether or not you can continue to do that over and over again. And then if you get to a point where you have to come back and redo it, is that something you're going to want to do? There is no harm in turning around and going a different route. Again, ride for tomorrow. Be willing to admit something is over your head. It's okay to turn around. This is something I've had to learn because I have gotten myself in over my head, and then I've had to try to turn around to some really difficult positions on some incredibly steep hills where if I had looked at it, saw how rocky it was, recognized the consequences for failure were incredibly high, I wouldn't have done it. But I didn't have that thought going into it. And I've worked on getting to that point. So the decision making as you go into something is, what are the consequences for failure? Are you willing to accept those, or is it better to find a different route? You can still have a great time riding, doing something different without pushing the boundaries and limits. If you have some other mistakes that you commonly see other riders making, or you have made made those mistakes yourself, leave that in the comments below. If you agree or disagree with me on those common mistakes, let me know in the comments below as well. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. Remember, you can always make more money, but you cannot make more time. So get out and do that ride you've been thinking about, especially if it involves camping out in the great wilderness nature. Thanks for watching. Get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there.